This is Fireside Chat with me, Johnny B. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Great to be back for the next edition of Fireside Chats with Johnny B. Thank you guys so much for your patience while I was out. I was wrapping up a bunch of personal stuff, all good stuff, graduating from the college and doing all that stuff. So that's all done, and I am back and excited for the things that we have going forward. The format's going to look a little bit different from the way I was doing it before, where I had season one and trying to get people in all the time. Now it's going to be a little bit more laid back. I guess Joe Roman or Joe, dadgummit, what's his name down in Austin? The famous guy from the TV, the Joe Rogan. There we go. Where we're just going to publish the episodes as they get them. So I'm not going to be as stressed to get them out all the time, but I want you guys to still listen in when they come out and find these messages of hope. If you can share them with your friends who might be going through something so that they can see that, other veterans have gone through something similar to what they're dealing with. And we found hope and they can too. And I want this to be that little beacon for them that if you look in the direction of Jesus Christ, you're going to find hope, you'll find healing, and life will be a lot better. So that being said, today I got a special treat for y'all. Professional speaker and firefighter, Air Force veteran, Sam DeSessa is on the line with us. Sam, how are you doing?
Well, good evening, Johnny.
Hey. So you're over at the firehouse over there tonight, right?
Yes, sir. I am. I'm covering for somebody tonight, so I'm covering shift.
Nice.
For a little bit, yeah.
So for everybody listening in, if you start hearing a bunch of crazy bells going off during the middle of the show, it's because Sam is sitting in the firehouse protecting our war fighters over there at Naval Air Station Fort Worth, keeping the birds flying, keeping everybody safe. And we appreciate you doing that, by the way.
I got to tell you, John, man, before we even jump into this, I know you weren't really expecting it. It's not on any kind of agenda. You wanted this to be a very organic conversation, which I appreciate. But first and foremost, I want you to know how much I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast, giving this platform for veterans to share their experiences, losses, wins, the good stuff, the bad stuff, just being authentic, and just giving them a voice. By them, I mean us. I mean me. We appreciate it. We appreciate
thank you for that, actually, and thank you for being able to take the time tonight and share your story. So, yes, Sam, are you originally a Texas boy, or are you from somewhere else?
So that would be an interesting question. My father was in the Air Force. So he was stationed in a naval air station in Kingsville when he met my mom. So he started off working for the Navy active duty. He got out, and then he came back into the military in the Air Force. He finished off his career as an E9 Chief Master Sergeant, high as he can go enlisted. And so my childhood, we traveled around every, 3-4 years or so. We were packing up and moving to new places, meeting new friends, and which was definitely a blessing in a lot of ways, but in other ways, it probably had some negative effects as well. But I'm not originally, well, I was born in Texas, but then we launched pretty much after that, and we were all over the place. I spent about 8 years total in Germany. We spent 5 years over there, came back to the States, to Maine for 3 years, and we were back over in Germany for 3. I ended up graduating high school over in Germany. So we traveled all over Europe. So I really couldn't say that Texas was home other than I was born here.
But you got back as fast as you could.
I got as fast as I could, though.
But I've also heard that Germany is a really, really cool place to be stationed. So I'm sure you got to see a lot of really cool stuff.
Germany was really fantastic. It really was a great place. This is, in the 80s, 90s. There were some weird things going on terrorism-wise in the 80s and stuff over there. So there was definitely some of that kind of stuff going on. As a pretty young guy, my father had taught me how when he was deployed somewhere, I was the man in the house. So I had to go out and check the car for unusual wires and things that might be bombs. And so that's
Oh
an
wow.
interesting responsibility for a, young
Yeah,
teenager.
for a really young man at that point. So I mean, because that kind of woke you up to a lot of things at a young age, then, didn't it?
It did, because I was very, very much aware of what was going on in the news, things like that. First time we were over there, so that was 80 to 85 as a kid, we'd be taking our little bus ride to school because we lived off base, and they'd be banging. The Germans would protest the base being there sometimes. And so you'd have all these adults banging on the windows of the bus or throwing things at it. And, as little kids, we didn't really understand what everybody's pissed off at us for.
Were they not aware that that was a school bus and there was just a bunch of kids inside?
Oh, it was, it's the typical bus,
Oh wow.
big old
Okay.
yellow tube. So, yeah, I think they're aware.
So then you said you went back. Was this around about the same time as the wall coming down?
Yeah, no, we were over there for the wall coming down
Oh,
for sure.
cool.
Because so 80, 85, we were there. And then we came back to the States, lived in Maine for 3 years, primarily for like middle school. And then I was back to Germany from 88 to 91. And 91 is when I graduated.
Okay. So you graduated in 91 and then you came back to Texas, or did you enlist
I
while you were in
enlisted
Germany?
immediately from there. I was in Germany. Matter of fact, I was 17. So my parents had to sign the paperwork for me to go into the Air Force and put my life on the line. I had to have parents' signature for that. So they signed that paperwork and I swore in. And the reason for that is I want to be a firefighter since I was a kid. That was the plan. I always wanted to be a firefighter. But then, we're over there, we're in Germany, and I'm a typical teenager, didn't have as many distractions as I have here in the States. So there was always girls. So
As it
I
always
had
is.
I had a high school sweetheart and I got her pregnant. And so instead of, hey, let me go back to the States and try and find a fire academy to go through it, pay for it, the whole thing, and hope when I come out of that school that there will be a department that'll pick me up. I need to start making money like right now. Like it's happened, it's happening. The bun is currently in the oven, and you got to start making money, dude. So my father, like I said, having been in the military my whole life, was the example, the role model for that. And I knew that the system worked for him. So he took me all over the base, introduced me to different people doing different jobs, air traffic controllers, everything else. I scored really well in the SFAB. I could pick from any number of different jobs out there. And at one point, I went through a stage where I kind of thought about doing intel, but bottom line is I just kept coming back to the fire thing. And sure enough, I one day came out of school and there was black smoke everywhere, and the bowling alley, for the second time, by the way, was on fire. The base that we were at, it's called Han, and that
Was it
the bowling alley is burning up.
was it the
What's that?
kitchen in the back with a deep fat fryer fire? Deep
It has
fat
something to do with
fryer
that
fire.
fryer.
That's always so hard to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, I think you're right. But
Typical.
I looked over there, I saw those guys on the roof, and I was like, nope, that's what I want to do. That's it. Like that's what I want to do. Funny story, real quick. One of the guys that was on that roof is the fire chief of Corpus Christi Naval Air Station right now.
Oh, so
Hey,
y'all have that
Jeff.
professional connection going on.
Well, there I was, 16, 17, looking up at that bowling alley, looking at those heroes, and one of those heroes happens to be the fire chief at Corpus now. So,
Oh wow.
yes, sir.
So clearly, your father's influence was a big factor of why you decided to go Air Force.
100%.
Okay. And that's cool. I mean, I'm sure he, had a nice little bit of pride watching his son go through Air Force Base and come out and ready to tackle the world.
That's it. Absolutely. Yep. Parents were very supportive, and yeah,
Right on. And so you went to Lackland, as
I did.
I'm sure most people do these days for the Air Force, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you finish up at Lackland, you go to firefighting school. Where's that for the Air Force?
So at the time, it was in Illinois, a little base called Chanute.
Okay,
And
not too far from Navy boot camp.
Okay. So it was in Rantoul?
No, Navy boot camps in we call it Great Mistakes, Great Lakes,
Oh,
Illinois, just outside of
yeah.
Chicago. But in terms of the map of the United States, it's you're up there near the Navy boot camp.
I gotcha. Well, our little base was outside of a town called Rantoul, and that's when I made one of my first biggest mistakes that I'd ever made at that time. I went out and got a Tasmanian devil tattoo with a fire helmet on his head.
That's awesome.
Oh, John, that's less than awesome, my friend. Less than awesome.
I'm sure we'll compare notes later. I think we both have some stupid stories about bad decisions and tattoos.
Unless you have a lower back tat of the Loch Ness monster, I don't know if you can beat my Tasmanian devil. I hadn't got to the worst part yet, John. He was holding a rose in his hand. I don't know why, but he had a freaking rose in his hand. So,
I mean, from my perspective, that's kind of awesome.
He had the little tornado under him and everything.
Right
he's long since been tattooed over. Now he's a giant dragon on a piece of armor. But at the time, hey, that's what I ended up with.
I mean, it worked at the time, right?
Right? I sure thought it did.
So from firefighting school after boot camp, off you go to your first duty station, which was where?
I had barely turned 18, and because I graduated early at 17, and that was Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.
Oh, that's the perfect place to put a fresh 18-year-old.
And that was the problem right there, is I'm picking up on a little bit of potential sarcasm, which I speak relatively fluently. And yeah, exactly right. Drinking age at the time was 18. And I got to the base and immediately was one of the only people who hadn't yet deployed to Saudi. So they immediately, packed me up without further ado, introduced me to Saudi Arabia for the first time. Ended up doing 3 tours in the Air Force over there.
Okay, so this was 91, 92 time frame?
Yep, that was 91.
So yes, this is fresh during Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it was.
So were you involved in any of the conflict there, or was this after the...
So we were, and then also there was the constant barrage of the mop gear, of course, right? And so we're over there, every unusual cloud, every dust storm, everything. And anytime somebody saw something in the air, they'd set off the klaxon. We're mopping up, putting on the mop gear, because Saddam had threatened to chemically attack everybody over there, right? And he'd already done some of that to his own people. So the threat was viable.
Yeah. And for everybody listening, when Sam's talking about mop gear, we're talking about, the big rubber suits that people put on that covers everything. It doesn't allow any air in to allow contamination onto the person that's wearing it.
Yeah, it's the heavy green protective suit, like you're saying, with a gas mask. Yeah, and you're already in the desert, so it's hot as Hades, and you're putting on this.
Yeah, these things gear. They do not breathe at all.
Right. No air in or out. That's their point.
I mean, it's to protect you, but at the same time, it's
absolutely,
it's horrible. So
yeah, and it was scary because you're 18 years old, and your life's being threatened, several times a day, and that kind of thing. And they really hammer it into you. You take a single breath of this stuff, and you'll be dead or maimed, for the rest of your life. And that's legit. I mean, chemical warfare is no joke, as you know.
But they do kind of play it up a little bit just to get that. I don't know.
To make sure you're taking it
compliance by fear, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're dealing with this at the age of 18.
Yes, it was.
That sounds like fun. So you did 3 years in Saudi Arabia doing basically that on a daily basis.
3 different tours, yeah.
Okay.
They were anywhere from 4 or 5 months at a time, and they were kind of spread out. I went over there in 91, 94, 96. So, also at the time, remember that Saddam's troops realized that they were losing, so he ordered the burning of the gas wells too.
Yep, I do remember.
So the oil wells, yeah. So we were over there dealing with those and breathing in that stuff, and you'd spend for a couple hours afterwards, you'd be spitting out and spitting up and throwing up, black phlegm from the after effects of, obviously, his troops as they were retreating, setting off those fires. And I don't remember how many. It was 500-600 different wells on fire. I mean, when you see a large body of water with oil on fire, it's just surreal looking, especially in the evening. You see waves, you see movement on the water, and they're on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind's going, what?
And that's just straight crude oil on top of the water that's just straight burning.
Just straight going, yeah.
Oh, wow. So you were dealing with that. After Barksdale, did you stay in, or did you go ahead and transfer?
So I did several tours from Barksdale.
Uh-huh.
So since I was there from 91 to 97, that's 6 years. That was the longest that I'd ever lived anywhere in my life at that point,
Mm-hmm.
which seems unusual. Average, many people grow up within the vicinity of the town that they're born in, or they went to school or whatever. So you're less than 100 miles in any direction, average person, So for me, you got to know that growing up, having your friends, your girlfriends, any relationship, you only know these people for anywhere from a month to maybe a year or two. None of the fathers are all deploying it, or all being reassigned or PCS. They're not getting a permanent change of duty station at the same time. Everyone's rotating at different times. So my father may have been stationed somewhere 3 or 4 years, but my girlfriend's dad's been there already for 2 years. So now we've only got a year together, right? And we have no idea, because you don't know when the orders are going to drop and that kind of thing until a couple months out. Then, so unfortunately, I learned 2 things. One was positive, one was negative. One was how to make friends very quickly, how to be relatable, and how to meet people, and how to very quickly enter relationships and friendships that go a little deeper than average. The problem was they kind of bottomed out fairly shallow, because people in your life were temporary.
Yep.
And that was the downside to it, is in my mind's eye, it's no matter what the relationship was, well, it's only going to last as long as it's going to last.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's permanent. Nobody's, everybody's temporary. They're going to move on eventually.
It's almost like they're going to get replaced anyway type of mentality.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of guilty of it in our community to some degree.
Yeah, I can see that. I think for us, it was just more in our face because it was so common and so often.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a Barstow for that lengthy period of time, getting there at 18 years old, kind of being thrown to the wolves, this and that, I never really got much in the way of mentorship. So everyone was kind of busy with their own things, and there was a lot going on at the time. And so I didn't have leaders. I didn't have a leader. I had a supervisor, and he supervised, but I wasn't really leading. I wasn't getting mentorship. I wasn't getting leadership. I wasn't getting one-on-ones. I wasn't getting anybody to help me kind of navigate life at 18 years old, 19 years old at Barstow. And when I would go TDY, when I would be deployed somewhere, I'm coming back with medals. I mean, obviously, I'm must be a decent fellow. But back in my base, my experience in my base at Barstow, which I hated everything off that base, everything around the area, Bossier City, Shreveport, all this. I didn't gamble. I didn't really fish or hunt at the time. So there was nothing about being there that I enjoyed. I only went there because that's where my first wife's father lived, was in Louisiana. Was stationed at a base in Louisiana down south called Alexandria. So I was up north in Bossier City, Shreveport at Barstow. And so not getting that kind of mentorship, not being guided, and pretty soon after being there, after being deployed and coming back that first time, my first wife served me with divorce papers, and I had a daughter. And like you, I know you went through your you went through on your ship where you had that period of time that you really had some poor management, you weren't seeing the things
Mm-hmm.
that you were doing, and even at some points sabotaging what you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And our experiences from that point of view were very similar, because some of my coworkers were seeing what I was doing overseas and coming back with and didn't like it. And of course, I'm 18 years old and cocky, and I'm sure I was a jerk also. But had I had a mentor or a leader to say, hey, look, bud, this is how we do things. This isn't how we do things. That would have been so beneficial. Because I'm sure if you went back to some of those people and said, hey, one day he's going to be a fire chief. That dude's going to go on to run a whole department on his own. They'd probably look at you cross-eyed. I
Yeah.
mean, in ways, you were
You're
kind of
talking
a
about
black
that
sheep.
guy?
Right. No, yeah. They pegged me as a troublemaker, or they pegged me as not worth their time, whatever. And I knew that. And that's part of the stress that I was carrying around.
Yeah.
That was part of, so I've got this wife, she and I were high school sweethearts in Germany. Our fathers worked on the same base over there, Han. We graduated high school over there. Her a year behind me. I'm 91, she's 92. She's pregnant. I come back, go to basic, all that. She eventually rotates back to the States. She comes to Louisiana. We set up house, and we're just basically playing house because neither of us knows what the heck we're doing at 18 and 19 years old.
Right.
So then I deploy and I'm gone, big old chunk of it. So there's no connection being made. There's no, I didn't know what really to do as a man, leader of the home. I wasn't doing anything biblical like that for sure. I was raised in a home that we went to church, but for me, it was just more of a Sunday thing. It was more kind of my parents' thing. I was kind of drug along with whatever they were doing, and it was cool, but it wasn't anything that was mine yet.
So yeah, so it's safe to say that at this point you did not in any way have a relationship with Christ.
No,
Right.
no. I knew of him, and I believed in God, and I believed in Jesus. I did believe, but it was never really explained to me, I don't feel like, or it didn't click with me at least,
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus
You
is
were a step
real.
further than I was.
Yeah, that Jesus was real and walking with us and available to us. That was a foreign concept to me. I don't even think I was even aware that some people thought that at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So, yeah. So there was a Barksdale. I'm stuck there for 6 years. I'm hitting it on duty. I'm going through a divorce. My off-duty life sucks. My on-duty life sucks. And it's a lot of stress. So my outlet, if you will, was get the hell out of here. So I would deploy a lot. And that's where I was respected. That's where people could see what I was doing. But at the same time, I'm going over and dealing with some crazy things too. Just for the distraction, like I cross-trained in the EOD. Went to Shepherd, went to Eglin, did the whole deal. Then got called back to the fire department because of manning. But I liked to be distracted. I liked to be involved with things, to do things, it's all about the action of everybody doing something. And really it was just distraction to keep me from having to think about all the things that I had not processed through. Mm-hmm. And I know that makes a degree of sense to you there. So,
well, you're also going through a divorce, a really contentious one from what I remember. And
yes,
that presented its own set of challenges for you, didn't it?
It did. It did. And that was my first wife. So I've been married 3 times. So the military and the fire department are not really conducive to relationships. But in saying that, I was never married to somebody who had that both of us had the same moral compass at the same time, that both of us were Christians, actually walking the walk, not just talking the walk or talking the talk, but walking the walk. So that comes later. But in 93, I'm deployed. I get the papers for the divorce. We had 1 daughter together, and that daughter, she's doing great. She's married. They're an Air Force guy up in Washington, and they give us our only grandbaby that's a female, little girl up there. So,
all right, good for her.
But at the time, divorce papers flying in while I'm deployed, and so how do you even deal with this? I come back to the States, 93, and now I used to live off base. I had freedom. I had autonomy. I could go do whatever the heck I want. I was getting BAS, BAH. I'm living a good life, right? All that extra pay, renting a little house off base. I could leave the base when I was done with work for the day. And now that I'm divorced, and by the way, that was 18, 19, I'm 20 years old and divorced.
Total freedom.
Point.
Nobody
like
to check in with, check out with. Do whatever you want
now,
when you want.
I got to move in with a roommate. I got to move into the dorms. So I have this roommate, and he was on the opposite shift of me. So every 2 weeks or so, we would both have a day off at the same time. So one time over a 2-week period, we were both in the room for 24 hours. And we were buddies. But of course, what were we doing together? Distracting each other, right? We're watching TV, going to get something to eat, coming back and drinking. And that's just something you do. There's no joy in that. There's no end to that. There's no, if that's all you're doing, it's just not a good, it's not a good.
That's just passing time with someone else there.
Just passing time with someone else there. Exactly. So one day I come back and he has used a bladed weapon and he has tried to harm himself pretty good. And I had to talk him into getting help because he is refusing help. He's like, do not call anybody. And I'm standing there going, this bathroom is a mess. Our carpet in our little living room shared area is a mess. And we need to do something here because that's a lot of loss. You know what I'm saying? And so at this point, I finally convinced them, dude, the Air Force is not going to kick you out. They're going to get you help. And, you might be out of the fire department for a little bit while they work through your stuff, or they might send you to class. But I convinced them they're going to help you out. Everything's going to be fine. But you've got to reach out. We can't sweep this one under the rug. Even with long sleeves, he wasn't going to be able to cover the whole thing up.
It was
and so bad. It was pretty gnarly.
And
so I convinced them of that. And sure enough, they come in and they escort him out. And they actually escorted him out in cuffs.
In cuffs, really?
In cuffs, man. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, one day he comes back in, and I hadn't seen him in months. Rumors here and there, but hadn't seen him in months. Comes back in, he's kind of bandaged up, this and that. Gathers up his stuff with law enforcement officers standing there watching. Load up all of his stuff, this and that, and he leaves. And on the way out, he turns and he says, "I told you. This is all your fault." And he just left. Never saw him again.
Well, I mean, it might have been all your fault, but I mean, he's potentially to this day still upright and walking around instead of the alternative. So.
Absolutely true. And looking at things through the eyes that I have now, I can completely see that. 100% I can see that. Now,
but then,
that's after a lot of change in my life, including my walk with Christ. So we're not there yet. Right. So all of this to me is just more weight on my shoulders. This is more like I just got a guy kicked out. I just got a guy fired from his job. I just have a guy that has no idea what he's going to do in life. I just caused this mess. And I didn't know how to process that very well. So
at this time, I mean, you're struggling trying to figure out how to deal with this.
I'm carrying the guilt from it, and really just probably more drinking. Other than that, I mean, I really don't remember a hell of a lot. Other than every time I thought of it, it was just weighing on me. And I have this. I kind of picked up somewhere along the way this. I was around this time, but I started really doing a lot of negative self-talk. And it is something I still sometimes deal with today. And it's one of those things where it's grace for thee, but not for me. Believe it or not, a lot of people are like, hey, go easy on me. And they're not worried about other people. So it's all like grace for me, but none for thee. You screwed me over. You wronged me. I'm mad at you. Grace for me, none for thee. But I was the other way around. John, if I'm sitting there in your podcast, if I was face to face with you right now and you spilled your hot coffee in my lap, I'd just be like, okay, it is what it is. Let's mop it up. Let's move on. No big deal. If I was to knock that cup over onto your lap, I would have a propensity for calling myself names. I wouldn't tell you, John, man, you dumped that in my lap, you idiot. There's no way I would say that to you. Not because I'm afraid of confrontation or anything like that at all. Just because of the fact that that's not the kind of person I am. I have grace for other people. But if I was to knock that down for you, and I knocked that in your lap, then I'd be like, dang, idiot. And it happened enough that my wife now had noticed it and said, hey, your kids are hearing what you're saying. I'm like, what did I say? I mean, I had no idea, but I literally was mumbling them out loud. These things. That's how much and how often I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even
it's
realize.
Interesting that you're bringing that up, because I think that's something that a lot of us go through, where we blame ourselves for a lot of things that we don't realize that we're so hyper critical of ourselves. But like you said, offering grace to everybody else except for us, our own selves.
And it's not a false humility thing. It's not oh yeah, man, I'm so great with other people. No, I'm telling you, genuinely, something like that I would see as an accident. Oops, coffee, my lap. Okay, that's hot. Don't get me wrong, and I'm probably going to dance around for a little bit. But I'm not going to make a big deal of it.
Minus a lawsuit against McDonald's.
There is that. Who knew coffee was going to be hot?
Who knew?
But yeah, so for some reason though, I just around that time, that's when that started.
Mm-hmm.
So that was around 93. So went back to Saudi in 94, Dhahran, and we have the Khobar Towers there, which was a complex buildings, and the Khobar Towers themselves are about 10 stories. And that's going to play into something I'll have to tell you about in a minute. But
yeah, but I think a lot of us remember that one. We all get the training.
Yeah, so I was there for that. So,
oh, wow.
But in 94, the British troop, I befriended a British troop. He was hanging out at fire station with us. Real cool guy. He got a Dear John, and he took a hop off of that building. And from 10 stories, man versus concrete, the concrete won. And it was obviously a mess. And we were called over there to deal with that, help with cleanup, that kind of stuff. So, and we realized who it was from some other people talking. Didn't even recognize him, of course, but ended up being our buddy. And so that, again, now, all of these things. So here we are. We're walking around with this backpack on that represents our stress. And all these pebbles, all these rocks, all these stones. My backpack's getting pretty dang full, John. I mean, my backpack's getting pretty full.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine.
So, 95, go to Bosnia. I remember over there. Of course, the outside of what used to be, we were stationed outside of what used to be Yugoslavia. But so when your Bosnian Serb forces killed like over 7,000 of the Bosniaks over there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were over there for that. Then I pulled the same mistake, if you will, the same move that I did back in high school. I got a girl pregnant. Wasn't ready to be married and such again yet. And, but I'm going to do the right thing. So I've always had this wanting to help other people thing. So it's kind of a hero complex, if you will. So, which can be really good if you apply that to going into the fire department, but it's not so good if you apply that to your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so I met this girl that had problems, a bad relationship. I'm like, hey, I'm your nut in shiny armor instead of the knight in shiny armor. I was crazy to go in that relationship. I don't even know what I was thinking, man. But went into that relationship, married her because she was pregnant. We ended up having 2 daughters. It was my second wife. We had 2 daughters. And so, which we were really not, we were married about 9 years, but just not a good relationship. She could be verbally abusive, physically abusive. her sister moved in with us for a little bit, her little sister, and she got to witness a lot of this stuff. I mean, cops were called before because my ex-wife's punching me, slapping me, all these kind of things. And you just know as a man, you're like, this, I don't have to tolerate this. But if I make a move, I'm automatically in the wrong because I'm a guy.
Well, it's not just that, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sure you remember that part from my story.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, there's a problem that we have within the military community where there's a lot of a lot of physical abuse that goes on against a service member. And the reason that a lot of the service members don't fight back or defend themselves is because there's this understanding that we have in the back of our heads that we know, and this is kind of what Samson was alluding to when he was just talking, is we know that if we do anything to try and defend ourselves, when we do anything to try and fight back, our career is immediately over at that point, because it doesn't take anything but one phone call and says, he hit me, you're the service member, you get arrested, your career is done.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, there's the little bit of a stigma there too. At least before, yeah, there's a little bit of stigma there too. It's lose because you lost a fight to a girl, or you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So there's your homies going, oh wow, your wife did what? Why you have that fat lip? But I mean, she would, straddle me on the couch, be hitting me, slapping me, whatever, and say, why don't you hit me back? Why don't you hit me back? Do something. You're not a man. Do something. Right. So, it's an awkward place to be because you absolutely know, you're weightlifting, or I'm teaching Krav Maga, I'm jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of reasons that this could go a different way, but I'm tougher than you, so I'll just sit here and I'll take it. You're angry, and by the time you're done with all this, you'll be tired and you'll go to bed or something. Like it'll be over before too long. So you just kind of suck it up and take it. So again, work life sucks, home life sucks. What am I going to do? Deployed to Saudi again. So did third tour, 1996, my last tour over there. And that is when, as you alluded to, the Hezbollah blew up the Kobar towers by parking a sanitation truck out there filled with explosives.
Mm-hmm.
Blew that up, killed about 20 Air Force troops and injured over 400 people. Absolute total chaos. Out getting a haircut and coming back to the dorms with a friend of mine. Our dorms were on the right. Chow Hall was in the middle, and on the left was the Kobar towers that they blew up. One of the towers they blew up. In the middle was kind of a Chow Hall. So I don't recall if we were going to the Chow Hall or if we were going back to the dorms, but either way, we were in between those two buildings when it went off and kind of hit the deck. I'm throwing up because the horizon is jacked up, because my ears are messed up because the horizon is kind of swimming. You're used to kind of looking up and you can see the flat horizon and it grounds you. You're like, okay, cool. But when your ears are really messed up like that from the pressure wave, the horizon starts to swim, which makes you feel like you just got off a roller coaster or something. So had it not been for my buddy I was walking with, he grabbed me by the collar. He's like, we got to get in there. I said, what the heck were we going there for? And, there, at this point, there's smoke coming out of the building. There's paper, which is the weirdest thing that I remember, is that it was like it was snowing paper. Like it was just the weirdest thing, paper everywhere coming out of the sky. But anyway, he said, we got to get in there, man. I said, why? He's like, we're firefighters. Oh, yeah. Suppose we do. So that kicked that off. We went in there and just kind of do what we got to do. We just see so many traumatic injuries from that, and deaths, and sorting people, triaging people on such a large scale event was stressful. And it lasted, of course, days. And then the cleanup, restoration, all that was weeks, and all that kind of thing. Then, of course, they moved us out of the dorms, and now they're putting us up in tents and things away from the complex. So you're living in these primitive conditions when you just had a dorm that had, marble floors and kind of some of the niceties, air conditioning and that kind of stuff. And now you're out here. So 1996, after Kobar came back, and then one of the last things that happened before I left Barksdale is we had a call to the lake on base. Barksdale has 6 different lakes that touch that base. It's pretty wild. It's actually been in hunting and fishing magazines, a military installation. So from that perspective, I didn't do any of those things at the time, so it wasn't that exciting for me. But a lot of people would come out there. But we had a call where we were coming off of another emergency. We got a call at the lake, and they said CPR in progress. And we get there, and there's a truck flipped upside down in the lake. And they got a guy on the side, and they're doing CPR on this dude on the shore. And someone said something about the kids. There was kids, and there were no kids around. So my partner and I had just hopped off the engine. I'm still wearing my gear as far as my pants, my bunker pants. So some firefighting boots with the firefighting suspenders and the firefighting pants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've seen before. Well, they weigh a decent amount, but when you step into water, they can fill up with water, the boots. If it does that, which it did in this case. So I went to the truck's upside down. So I went to duck under the bed to pop up on the other side because we couldn't get the passenger door open, which is the one that was closest to us because it's upside down. So I'm going to go underneath the bed, pop up on the other side. And what I didn't realize is that the floor of the lake slanted immediately. It dropped off. So as I go to go underneath it and duck under it, I immediately drop 7 or 8 feet under the water. Boots are filling with water. I can't get the boots off because of the suction. So I basically almost drowned. I'm not basically so I almost drowned. To the point where you held your breath long enough that your lungs are convulsing. You ever do that one?
I personally have not, but gotten real close sometimes.
I didn't know if, being Navy, we had to do the Class 2 Navy swimmer thing for a while. There, stay certified in it. So I didn't know if you guys ever did any of that. Or
the SAR swimmers, I think they have to do that, but regular what, Class 3 I think is for basic, or was it Class 1?
Okay,
one or the other. For basic
swimmer
that one, you don't have to do that.
That one right there, come to find out. So I finally get the boots off. I finally come to the surface, and I'm gasping for air, and I'm just like, holy crap, my whole world has stopped for a minute. I come up, and I realize my partner's still trying to get the door open. They have no idea I'd gone under.
So it would have been a few minutes before they even realized.
Yeah. So I'm like, holy crap. And so come to find out that there were no kids in there. They had the kids in another vehicle. Somebody had them in their truck, and they're running the heat in the truck because it was cold out. So they had the kids already, and they parked away, so they couldn't see them doing CPR on their dad. So, all these things make sense, but at the time,
after the fact, that makes sense. But then it's,
right.
Would have been helpful to know.
Would have been helpful to know. So that experience right there was just very traumatic. I cannot be locked into a roller coaster or things where I cannot self-evacuate, self-egress, self-escape. I got to have an exit plan because if at any point I feel like I'm locked or I'm trapped in beyond my own control, like I did that day, then it kicks in anxiety, PTSD from all that, of course, but I didn't know that at the time. So that was the kind of the snapshot. In between there, we ran a lot of mutual aid with fire departments off base. We've seen suicides and drownings, and because as you know, the statistics on veteran suicides and such. So we respond to all of those on the installation. So I've seen all sort of unique and different ways that people do that. And then off base, we ran some calls. Like one time we ran, and there were these girls that were missing, and the mom and the dad were like, yeah, the girls are still in there. And so we did a primary search. So in other words, we go take a little right-hand search pattern. We go around this whole building. There's no way this house. There's no one there. We did a thorough search. They're not in there. And they said, no, they're in there. We're like, well, where are they? Well, they're in their room. Okay, so we go back in, secondary search. We went the other way, do a left hand. Okay, do a left hand search pattern, go around this whole, they're not there. Come back out, and this is thick black smoke. This is a lot of fire at this point. It's untenable. They're not, it's not survivable at this point. And he said, they're in their room upstairs. And I said, we didn't find any stairs. And they said, you have to pull down the attic.
No.
So they had a room that they modified. They put upstairs in this kind of false ceiling area, whatever. up in the rafters, they built them a little playroom kind of thing, whatever. And failed to mention that. So we're, of course, looking for stairs or something to the second floor, or we, find anything we're going around. So it didn't make any sense. But there's guilt from that. Because what if? I mean, that was when we first got on scene. We could have done something with that had we known.
Yeah,
but
critical information there.
Critical information. But you have this expectation that you always train for success. And so all of these that you're not successful on, where you just arrive too late, or, and it's not because really we've got pretty quick response times. It doesn't feel like it to people because they call 911, they're watching their loved one laying there on the ground for whatever reason, and they're calling 911. It feels like, because of adrenaline, that it takes us a long time to get there. But really, most fire departments respond pretty quickly, unless you're in a very urban area and you have a volunteer department that has to get to the station and get a truck and then go out there. A lot of your departments that are staffed, they're actually pretty fast to get there, but the human mind changes the time because of your adrenaline and such.
What's actually 3 minutes seems like 30.
Right. Yeah. And people get very mad, and they come back and blame the department and all these things. And when you go back and you listen to the tapes and such, it's like, no, they were there in 5 minutes. That's well within standards, from the time he called. So anyway, so I left Barksdale in 1997, went to Honduras. I went to Honduras in 97. That was a good deployment. I had some good leadership. I had a guy that recognized my potential, a guy named Ricky, and he dumped the responsibilities on me. And something that my dad raised me with is, he had this mantra, and it was, if you have the ability, you have the responsibility. So if you have the ability to promote, you have the responsibility to promote. Why? Because you can help more people the higher you go. He had that. If you have the ability to help people, you have the responsibility to help people. So it was always about this. If you have the ability, you have the responsibility. That being ingrained in me, I always wanted to do that. And in some ways, I could have taken that to the negative level. Maybe that's why I went into some of those relationships that I was in, or things like that. One could argue. And some, just because you have something good doesn't mean you're wielding it with wisdom, right? It's value neutral. If you have the ability, you have the responsibility. If I have the ability to rob a bank, I have the responsibility to rob the bank, right? So that obviously is not what it means. It means applying it to, utilizing wisdom and doing things that are good, that honor people, that help people, etc. And that was always the heart of it. But when you fail to do that, when you try your best, and your best isn't good enough,
and there's no training for that.
There's no training for that. So we're down in Hurricane Mitch. It's Honduras, 1998, Category 5, and it kills over 10,000 people. Destroys the only bridge going into their capital city, Tegucigalpa, and it just decimates the area. But so many people that we had gone out to for mudslides and rock slides, and we'd find out that somebody was somewhere, and we'd have to rappel down and get to them. And a couple people we helped out, and a couple people we get there, and there's no way, And so I think you had seen some of that kind of stuff as well with over there in Japan. So I would imagine that a mudslide's a mudslide, whether it's California or Japan, wherever, looks about the same. So you've seen the aftermath of people having been buried under those, and the after effects, and what the bodies look like, that kind of thing. So
very familiar with that.
Yeah. So it was that was my first good base, where I really just felt like this is a good place. This good leadership, solid people. And right as I'm getting ready to leave out, Hurricane Mitch happens, and they have to extend me and this and the other thing. But again, super stressful. But hold on 1 second. I guess the dinner's ready. At any rate, so that was kind of the culmination, the ending of that tour for me. So at that point, I left 1998 to Charleston, South Carolina, and did my last 2 years there fairly uneventfully. Now, while I was shooting at the range, though, I met a guy in a suit. He's with a little group of 4 or 5 guys, and he says, "Hey, man, I saw you helping your buddy over there. And I said, yeah, he was having a hard time with the qualifying on the M16. So before his test next week, we're out here practicing. He's like, I was listening to you, and you're really good at shooting. Did you grow up around guns? I said, no, sir. Just from the military? I said, yes, sir. Okay. You want to make some money part-time? Yes, I do. So
who would say no to that?
Who would say no to that? So kind of off to the side, under the table-ish, but I started working for a private military contractor part-time, doing some classes and this, that, and the other thing, which eventually led to me working with them on a more full-time basis and deploying and doing things with them. So from about 98 to 2001, I bounced between a couple of private military contractors. So those PMCs, the private military contractor organizations, they, for a lot of people that don't know, sometimes they get a bad name because people don't understand it. They turned it into a giant political thing where they will call them mercenaries, or money, guns for money, money for hire, guns for hire, all that kind of stuff. And they say that some of these PMC organizations, a bunch of cowboys, like they don't have to go through all the same training as the military does. Well, that's absolutely false, because as
most of them are coming out of the military.
Just about all of them are coming out of the military. A very, very strong military background. Some of them are even special forces, and they're serious. And so I was teaching a little rifle class for them and some protective service courses, and then deployed to them. So I did that till about 2001, and then 2001 I came here to this base. But
okay, well, I think that's a good spot right there that we're going to have to bookmark this. And for everyone that tuned in, thank you so much for hearing at least the first half of Sam's story. So far, we've heard him talk about growing up in Louisiana, meeting his first wife, and unfortunately how that fell apart. His second wife, and same thing. But if you come back next week, we're gonna sit down with Sam again, and he's gonna wrap up and tell coming into civilian life what he did, and definitely we're gonna get to how he dealt with all the things that he went through, and then what it looked like when he submitted to Christ and let Jesus carry the load for him, and how things are going now for him. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Sam, thanks for giving us the first half of your story. Looking forward to hearing the next half of it. For everyone else, again, thank you. Remember, tune in here on Spotify. We're on Apple now. Finally got that working. Had some issues, technical issues getting that done. But we are on Apple, so you can share this with all your friends on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Google, and Audible. All the major platforms. Share this with your friends. And definitely, if you have a friend or you yourself are going through something, what I hope you guys get out of this is that there is hope. There is a way to get to hope, and you just got to reach out and talk to somebody. And we are here that we can get you in touch with the right people. Please just don't give up. We're always going to be cheering for you. We love you. Can't wait to sit down with Sam and hear the next half of this. And love you guys. We'll see you next time.